Welcome back to the Movement Initiative. Today it's going to be me and Jacob, and we're going to be talking about patrol basics. This is going to be a multi-part series, and this is part 2 of that series. Today we're going to be talking about gear, some of the considerations within patrolling, just things that you should do and things you shouldn't do. Hope you enjoy the episode, and let's get it on.
I'm so tired of being sick. I feel like I'm finally on the I'm on the final stretch. I think I'm finally obviously I feel way better than I did, but
Biden warned you, right?
Yeah, that I'd have a year of, or what do you say? A summer of sickness, or a winter of sickness and death. Something like that. But yeah, I ended up getting that hand, foot, and mouth virus. And
which is pretty rare for an adult to get, right?
Yeah, it's pretty rare. It's kind of like chicken pox, like in the way that if kids get it, it's just kind of not that bad. But if an adult never got chicken pox and then they get it, it can be pretty bad. Kind of the same thing. Hand, foot, and mouth virus is like a kid's. It's something that kids usually get.
Yeah.
Adults generally get the antibodies for it, but for whatever reason, I never did. And I just got it. I've had it for the last week and a half. And, dude, it's one of the worst, sicknesses I've ever had to deal with. I've been fortunate to not have crazy, health problems, really.
Yeah.
But, dude, it's no joke. And I still feel, I'm not contagious anymore because it's super contagious too. But I stopped being contagious. Basically, when all your little spots go away, you stop being contagious. But man, I just feel like I'm at 60%. I feel like energy wise, I'm 60, 70%, not fully back yet. I just can't quite get back. It's weird. So
you'll never get back.
Yeah.
This is who you are now.
There's that that irrational fear of is this just what I am now? I guess it just feels like it's been so long, but it hasn't actually been super long. It lasts about 14 days. So, but yeah, basically what it is, it's you get, so when was this? This was, not last Thursday, but the Thursday before, I think. Yeah. And I had 103.8 fever, almost 104 degrees, which was crazy. And I was like, that's pretty high. And I know once you get, up above 104, you're supposed to seek medical attention most of the time as an adult. So I was like, that's weird. And I don't get fevers very often. So, but my body kicks fevers pretty quick usually. And it did. It went away. I broke it within, that night basically. Then the next day, woke up just feeling like crap and then ended up with another fever again. I was like, dude, no. What is going on? And then it went away. So I was trying to, get stuff done. I was like, well, I'm pretty sick, but I guess I'll go to the shop and try to maybe not be open, but get stuff done. So I was kind of doing that. Then I started getting a fever again, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to have to go home and rest. And then Saturday morning, I woke up, and I had just red bumps all over my hands and my feet. And I was like, no, dude, what is this? So I was kind of weirded out because it literally came out of nowhere. I woke up with them, and I was like, okay. Well, my wife's pregnant, so I was kind of, and I was noticing the symptoms, and I was I was doing a little research, and I was like, man. So I kind of woke Samantha up, without touching her or anything, and I was like, hey, this is kind of random, but I might have hand, foot, and mouth. And she was like, what? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, well, that can be kind of dangerous for people that are pregnant. And I was like, I know. I'm going to try to go to the doctor. So I got up. I felt really good, though. I didn't have a fever or anything. And at the time, they didn't really feel like anything. They were a little bit like my hands and feet were kind of warm, I guess, kind of tingly. And I was like, oh, this is kind of weird. So I was up kind of doing stuff and ended up going into the doctor, and they were like, yep. And by this time, like, it'd been a few hours now. It's like my feet were starting to hurt a little bit. And I was like, dude, what is this? This is starting to feel weird. But so while I was at the doctor, they were like, oh yeah, they like swabbed everything and checked it. They were like, you've got hand, foot, and mouth virus. And I was like, what? And they were like, yep. The doctor was like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's probably not going to be very good. You're going to probably, she was like, do you feel any pain? I was like, my feet are actually hurting pretty good right now. She's like, yeah, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You're going to probably be in some pain. So she was like, there's no medicine for it. There's no antibiotics. Like, it's a virus, so you just have to fight it. She's like, you're going to have it for 10 to 14 days. And then I was like, okay. She's like, you're contagious until your spots go away. And I was like, great. So, yeah, they're like, alternate Tylenol and ibuprofen. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, so Sunday, dude, I'm telling you, man, like, it went from like 0 to 100. Like, my night was miserable. Saturday night, I woke up Sunday, I could barely walk. Like, my feet were, it literally, what I've told everyone is it felt like standing in a fire ant pile and just getting bit by ants, like, constantly. So it wasn't like excruciating pain, but it's just like super annoying. Like, you're just like, okay, like you're trying to find like some kind of relief,
Yeah.
Like, I would try to like position my feet, and my hands felt that way too, but not as bad as my feet. And trying to like position myself to like get some kind of relief. And so yeah, ended up like just misery through the day. And the other thing too is it's contagious, so I didn't want my family to get it, so I had to like isolate myself in my own house. Like, I had like a little section that we like set up like kind of on the furniture, like this was my chair that I was going to sit in. No one else was able to sit in it. It's like separated from everyone else. And then I had to sleep downstairs in like one of our spare bedrooms and just make a little like air mattress set up on the ground, and just lock myself in there. And it was just so just dumb. And then Monday was the worst. Monday, like the following day after Sunday was, obviously that's where Monday lands. But Monday was like, I was starting to have those like thoughts like, dude, what, like this better not get worse than this. Like, it got really bad. And I was like, this is no joke. Like, this is not fun at all. Like, super painful. My hands, like, I could barely do anything. Like, I had one of my buddies was like, if you're homesick, dude, let's play some video games. I was like, I can't. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, I can't grab a controller, dude. He's like, what? I was like, yeah, dude. He's like, what's wrong with you? I was like, I don't know, but I cannot hold a freaking controller. Like, there's no way. But thankfully Tuesday it all like tapered down, and then the spots started going away after that. But so this last whole week, the spots started kind of going away. But yeah, we had to just be closed. Like, I literally from last Thursday or Thursday before last through all of last week, we just had to be. The store was closed because you were on you work week on, week off, so you were on your day job.
Yeah.
And I just remember like updating Steven. He's like, how's it going? I was like, not good. He's like, are you, he was kind of like, not like, did you make it in? But you were just kind of like, well, like, what's the progress? And I was like, dude. And like, even if I had like wanted to go in, I don't think I could have, dude. It was legitimately like,
I don't think I was pushing you that hard.
No, you weren't. No, you
like,
weren't. You were like, no, dude. Like, you were telling me to stop being weird, because I kept being like, well, I'm, in the evenings I would like come in here and try to do stuff, and you're like, you just need to rest, because I was just trying to push it.
Well, and then I kept seeing videos on our story of you at the range, and I was like, dude, you need to stop going over to the range. You need to just like chill out.
Yeah, I would just go over there and take little, like, take some footage for a little bit, and then I'd start feeling like crap, and I was like, I better go home. And then I'd get home and I'd have a fever again. That was the thing too, is the fever just happened like for days. Like, it just kept coming up.
Your body trying to get that out of your system.
So
trying to burn it out.
Yeah, it's not been fun. The worst part is just like how long it drags on, but I guess technically the 10 to 14 days starts after you see spots. So this Saturday will be 14 days. So I'm still Still kind of in it, I guess. I'm just not contagious, which is good. But yeah, dude, no fun. It's been dumb. So yeah, we apologize if you've tried to come to the store and it's been closed. That's why, because I've just been a viral mess. So it was funny because I had a customer that was kind of frustrated, and he was like, "Hey, I want to come pick up the holster. You guys said it's done." I was like, "It is done." Yeah, and he was like, "Well, let me come get it." And I was like, "Well, here's the deal, man. I've been really sick and I'm contagious." And he was like, "Oh, I don't care about that." And he was like, I just want to come grab it really quick." He's like, "I'm not worried about it." And I was like, "Well, it has nothing to do." Like, I just kind of interrupted him. I was like, "I've literally got boils on my feet and I can't walk." And he went, "Oh." And I was like, "Yeah, dude, it has nothing to do with like, yes, I don't want you to catch it. And that is a reason. But the main reason is I'm not coming in there." So, but as soon as I said that, he was just like, "Oh, okay, get better." It was pretty funny. But anyways, so we're going to be getting into patrolling basics again, part 2. So last episode, we talked about just kind of the outline of it, the 5 principles of patrolling, and we broke down basically each of those and kind of how to plan, which I'll just tell you the 5 basics of patrolling. So planning, reconnaissance, security, control, and common sense. So we broke down each of those and kind of talked about what you need to be doing in each of those, and what kind of considerations you need to make. Basically, how to prepare and set up, and just the fundamentals of starting a patrol or doing a patrol.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and we talked about the fundamentals, but we also broke down how it applies for like the everyday man, I guess, as well. Like, why is it important to go out and actually do this and train with your people on these areas? So
yeah. So we're going to get into some more specifics on patrolling today. And we'll just jump right into it. We're going to start out with some gear considerations.
Yeah. Yeah, and we talked about MET-TC last time, and it's kind of something you got to consider going in, whether, like how we always do our I guess, pre-mission stuff, whether that's packing lists and stuff like that. Like, when we're getting our guys together, we give them a packing list, and it's going to be very dependent on what the mission is, what time of the year it is. Because, I mean, if it's winter or summer, it's going to definitely affect what you pack. Summertime, you're going to want to pack stuff that's going to keep you cool. Where wintertime, you're going to want to pack stuff that's going to keep you warm. So, and that's very dependent on the type of terrain you're into. Sometimes people's winters aren't actually that bad, so it's going to dictate what you do, I guess.
Yeah, and, like Steven said, we did mention MET-TC last time, but it's very important. So just to break it down again, basically what MET-TC stands for, it's an acronym, and it's METT-TC. And it's like the daddy of all acronyms. It's like it's like an acronym, dude. It kills me. But M stands for mission, E stands for enemy, T stands for terrain and weather, the other T stands for troops, and the third and final T stands for time available. And then you have civilian considerations. So just a reminder, we talked about that more in depth last time. But
yeah, and MET-TC is going to be basically what it's going to allow you to build your packing list. You got to look at that in order to figure out what you need and what you don't need. Because otherwise, you're just going to be bringing out an entire camp on your back, and you're just going to be slow and moving very pathetically through the woods. So, we talked about earlier on the last podcast, we talked about kind of offensive versus defensive patrols. Like, that's going to dictate what you pack as well.
Yep.
In your kit, because if you're planning on, hitting an objective or going out and ambushing someone or something like that,
or doing like a simple screening patrol, where you're just like screening the area, that would be more defensive, obviously.
Well, I'm saying for offensive, like
okay.
if you're talking about ambushes or you're trying to hit an objective or something like that, obviously you're going to pack with more, more gear that's
offensively focused, more
Yeah.
ammo probably.
yeah, more ammo, more plate carriers, helmets.
Yep.
You're gonna be set up with everything.
Yeah. And then, more defensive or like passive patrolling, like doing a standing or a screening patrol, you may be wearing more lightweight gear, more sustainment kind of stuff, like sustainment ruck with like chest rigs, a little more like recce setup, I guess, more reconnaissance focused possibly. So
Yeah, and you're looking at probably, I would say, time frame. You're looking at longer. You're gonna be out in the field longer for screening and reconnaissance patrols first.
oh yeah, direct action
combat.
patrols. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is, again, why you always want to reference that MET-TC. And we talked about that at length in the last podcast. So if you need some information on that, I encourage you to go tune into that. But it's again, it's a huge part of your planning. It's a really good outline to use to plan pretty much anything. And that obviously goes into gear as well. So the other thing too that you need to kind of focus on would be camouflage, camouflage considerations. Like, what are you going to wear? You need to match your environment. Camouflage is, I don't want to say it gets a bad rap, but I feel like it has gotten a bad rap, and I feel like it's making a recovery. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, I remember when I was in the military, like wearing camo was frowned upon. Like, and I think it was because we had to wear it all the time. But you would look at contractors and stuff, and you were like, dude, those guys look sick. They've got their like tan 511 pants on and polos.
Yeah, which that's pretty lame now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So, but it shouldn't have anything to do with, aesthetics or like what you think you want to look at, trying to look cool. I mean, looking cool is like the number one rule, but you can look cool in camouflage. So.
Yeah, and also it's like, if it works, it works,
Yeah.
We talked about in the reconnaissance podcast, like ghillie suits is a consideration for reconnaissance missions / patrols. Face paint, we talked about in that. I think if you're out in the woods and you're trying not to get detected, I think you should have face paint on. There's also camouflage as far as like under IR, stuff like that. So that can be considered.
Yeah. You want to take it all into consideration. And it needs to be color tones. It needs to be a color palette that's going to match the environment you live in. Like, don't get too hung up on, some Gucci camo, like a Rhodesian brushstroke or something like that. Like,
I mean,
that stuff's
works.
super cool. It looks awesome, but if it doesn't make sense for your area, then don't get it. If it works in your area, then get it because it's a super sick camo.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's something I've noticed now. It's like there's like a big emphasis on like obscure camos, like Flecktarn is like really popular, and then you've got like a guy in like some like super arid area like trying to wear Flecktarn, and you're like, what's going on right now? So
yeah, just popping out.
If you're in an arid area, you get to potentially play around with desert tricam, so the old chocolate chip. So yeah, you're blessed. So
just rock it.
Yeah, rock it. No, but seriously, like, pick a camouflage that works. The other thing too is it's good for uniformity. If you have, I would avoid a hodgepodge of like camos and colors. I would try to pick something that your whole team is going to be able to get and be able to wear, because then
and still find good gear with it too.
Yeah.
That's another thing. Like, there's some good camos out there, but you're not going to be able to find gear in it. And you can substitute like flat colors within that gear. Like,
yeah,
if you got green based camo, you can rock green, OD green or Ranger green kit on top of it. If you can't find that exact camo, like, you don't have to be. But for identification purposes, it is smart to have your team in like the same camouflage. We talked about that too in previous podcasts, but
yeah.
And actually in the last podcast I talked about how easy it is to do friendly fire. So
Yeah, it happens a lot if you're not careful.
So it's important to actually know who is good and who is bad, I guess.
Yeah. So basically, to summarize that, pick a camouflage that is going to work in your area and have some uniformity. It'll help you a lot for ID, like positive.
Yeah, and also
ID.
seasonal camouflage is a thing that you got to consider as well, because obviously a camouflage that, for at least for Alaska, the camouflage you run in the summer where you have lots of like vibrant greens and stuff like that, and up here because it's mostly like spruce trees. That we have.
Yeah, we have some bright greens here.
And you go from that to a lot of white and kind of like dark. Like the spruce trees get like almost, they're not as vibrant in the wintertime. They're just like kind of like dark and brown.
Yeah.
Like a dark green / brown.
Yeah, super dark green. And then you get like all the like just like pale wood colors, from like all your birch trees too that obviously don't fruit in the wintertime. So,
yeah. So just look around.
Snow. You've got snow, obviously. So.
Yeah. You can consider over whites if you're in some pretty crazy snow stuff. But, yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. And then, so moving on from camouflage, packs. Like you want to have, and again, this all points back at METTC. Are you going to be on a longer range patrol where it's going to be like, all right, we're going to be out for 5 days? Are we going to be out for 2 days? Is it going to be a week? That all dictates what kind of pack you have to bring. Might have to bring a ruck that's got, 7 days worth of sustainment in it. That's going to be a lot of stuff. Or it might just be a 72-hour thing, I think pretty much everybody should have and maintain a 72-hour ruck. I think that's a good rounded size ruck. And you can actually stretch that usually a couple days if you plan it out right. You can turn a 72-hour ruck into a 5-day ruck pretty easily. And obviously you can go for shorter than that. So the only downside would be weight for shorter periods of time. But that's a consideration if you're just doing if you're doing a more direct action patrol, like a combat patrol or like a clearing patrol, then maybe like a 24-hour pack and, more like offensive forward gear is going to be better. And so you don't need to weigh yourself down with a bunch of stuff, or you're going to offset your armor, because you're going to have armor on or whatever.
Yeah. And it's another thing to think about as far as packs. Like if you're doing vehicle patrolling, it's still smart to have packs like ready to go, because there's no guarantee you keep the vehicle through the entirety of the mission, I guess. So, I think it's smart to still have packs. Like, don't just be living out of the truck. Have a pack in there that you have your stuff, like, so you can still throw it on and beat feet if you need to.
Yep. Don't beat my feet, but yeah.
Yeah. Those feet have been beat enough.
Yeah.
Over the last week and a half.
Yeah. So, consider that. The other thing too is like camouflage for your packs. You can get carried away here. As long as you got a good earth tone pack, I think you'll be okay. Obviously, you want it to blend into your area, but packs can kind of stick out like a sore thumb if you're not careful. So, they have like little pack covers that you can put on, and you can also do like camo net and stuff like that to kind of conceal the outline of your pack. But
I think if you go with a good earth tone that like matches your environment, like I said, if you're got green based stuff, rock green. If you got deserty tan based stuff, rock tan or coyote or whatever.
Yeah. And
you're probably going to be just fine. Like, I mean, you can go to the next level and do all that stuff. It's not going to hurt anything. It's just going to make it better, but I don't think it's required, I guess.
Right. So, getting into rifles, this is obviously very, very METTC or mission specific, and it's extremely dependent on the area you're in. And hopefully by now, you've got your rifle setup figured out. But I'm just going to give you a good rule of thumb. This is very much my opinion, so take it for what it is. You want to get, I think a 5.56 setup is perfectly fine. A good patrol rifle, like just a good all-around rifle. But you want to have a length, like a barrel length, as long as practical for the area that you're in. So if you are in a super rural area, I think you're perfectly fine considering, that 16 to 18 inch barrel length. If you're going to be out in the woods, you're not going to be dealing with structures very much. That living around that full length, that 18 inch barrel, and if you want to have some DMR guys that are rocking, the more rifle length, like M16 style with the 20 plus inch barrels, then, there's that consideration too. But I think there's such a hyper focus on like short platforms nowadays.
Yeah.
But the 5.56 needs velocity. That's what makes that round so good, is having velocity, having speed. Velocity is the killer with 5.56.
Yeah. So
you don't want to neuter that round as much as possible. And I don't want to get into like the super nerdy like ballistics thing, so I'm not going to. But basically what I'm saying is, if you're in a very urban environment, can you get away with 12.5? Can you get away with a 13.9 kind of length, 14.5? Like, you probably can. I mean, I was in some very tight CQB stuff in the military here and there, and like even in Afghanistan, clearing through culottes and stuff like that. And we had a 14.5 inch setup. I mean, like the M4 carbine is a 14.5 inch barrel. Nothing super fancy about it, but yeah, shorter. And it's nice having something a little more wieldy and short for tighter stuff. But man, I think people get too focused on going super short, like.
And I don't know if 14.5's like 14.5's kind of on that verge of being like, it's kind of that sweet spot if you're, as far as like, if you're kind of got a mixture of different terrain. Like, I think that, I mean, you can do it with a 13.9 as well. Like, there's some companies that make 13.9s, but
yeah,
you can. But I think that 14.5 to 16 is kind of a sweet spot for if you've got buildings, but you also got some distance that you want to consider as well. I don't think it's a bad spot to be, but I don't want to go any shorter than that.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, nowadays, I do have an 11.5 inch build, but I barely use it. I barely use it.
Yeah.
I think 12.5 is the smallest. If I could do it all over again, I would have made it 12.5. I think 12.5 is the absolute smallest I would go. And I built that platform with a more home defense kind of vehicle born consideration.
Yeah.
Which is a super specific thing, and like I said, I barely use it. I don't keep it in my car. I'm too paranoid about that. Realistically, I have my EDC. I got my Glock 19 that I carry with me all the time, and that's what I got. So, for a home defense, and even from home defense, 12.5 would have been perfectly acceptable, and you actually get a lot more ballistic benefits out of that than you would out of a 11, even an 11.5. So. But like 10.3 and like 10.5, it's so short. And I'm not saying like go ditch your rifle and get something else, but you should look into it, because if you're rocking a 5.56 platform, you want to have some barrel length. I mean, that's just the bottom line there. So, and for like a patrolling perspective, you want something that's going to give you comfortable distance. If you can.
Yeah.
You should be able to fight at intermediate ranges pretty easily. And you're going to do that a lot easier with a longer platform. I recently saw I won't say who it was, but a very, very popular personality on Instagram. He's got a big company, very, very popular. And I like a lot of what he stands for and what he does, but sometimes he says things that I'm like, man, that just seems a little out, like, that seems ignorant to me. And something that recently came up is someone asked, I think it was like one of those ask me a question kind of things, you know, and one of them said, should I sell my 10.5-inch gun and get like a longer gun?
Yeah.
And excuse me. His response to that was, well, 90% of the people out there can't outshoot their 10.5-inch gun. So you should go train instead and get good with it, and then you can look into upgrading. And I disagree with that wholeheartedly. Again, I'm not saying that you need to sell your gun or anything, but I don't think that kind of points back to, you know, one, I think it's kind of a I don't know. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out the best way to explain this.
It's belittling.
It's belittling, and it's kind of a superiority like answer. And I know that, like, and this specific person is really big on, like, you know, like always getting better at shooting, and you know, which it's like, duh, you know. But obviously, this person having this gun over that gun doesn't affect their ability to go out and get good with a rifle. So that answer just, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and he doesn't know the skill level of the person he's talking to anyways.
You don't know the skill level. And also, we said this last podcast, I have been in combat environments with people that were not good shots, and they did their job fantastically.
Yeah.
It's not all about marksmanship. Again, I will say it again. That is not to say that you shouldn't focus on it, because there's no excuse for it. You should be as good as you can be. But I feel like a lot of these guys out there, that their claim to fame is like they're super fast and super quick and super efficient in marksmanship. They like stick to that and like, oh, they hold everyone else to that standard. I'm like, yeah, everyone should be held to a high standard, but there is more important things to work on. And yes, you getting a longer platform that's more capable is going to help you be better.
And help others around you. Like, that
Yep.
would be like me saying to one of my people that I'm training with, like, no, I don't want you to have a more effective rifle. I want you to get better at shooting before you have a more effective rifle.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I want him to have a more effective rifle? So that way when he does get better at shooting, or she, he's that much more prepared already. Like,
yeah. And I the only reason I bring that up is because that's a very common, it's a popular and common trend I see in this industry, is it's all about like, well, can you reload really fast? Well, then you're gonna die. And it's like, no, that's not true, because there's so many other things that go into keeping you alive. And I'm almost on the opposite end of the spectrum. For me, it's like, well, can you ruck 17 miles without like bending over and falling down a ravine and just being so weak and pathetic that you can't make it? You're going to die. Like, well, I'm glad you spent all that time on the range working on, you know, sub-second reloads or whatever.
Reloads.
But you can't carry a rucksack. You know, you can't carry this guy on your back a mile because he's injured and he can't walk anymore. You can't get these radios up. And
when you do get the radios up, you're just running on high power, and you're just letting everyone know in the world that you're basically broadcasting. Yeah,
you can't stop a bleed.
Broadcasting your position.
Yep, you can't stop a bleed. You got hit by shrapnel because you were on that high power radio, and you got mortared, and you got smoked by a bunch of shrapnel. And now you can't stop your bleed. You know, you can't. You get lost because you can't navigate. You don't know where you're going. It's like, good job. You spent a lot of time on the flight range. And I'm not, again, this is not disparaging, and I'm not saying don't spend time on the flight range. Like, I love it. Like, that's, and you should never be satisfied with where you're at.
No, you're going to always be working to get better, because if you take it seriously, you want to be the best, and you're probably never going to become the best. So you're just going to keep working.
But yeah, so stop just blindly listening to people because they're popular, or stop just like drinking the Kool-Aid, so to speak. look at what you need to do. This is about you. This is about your environment. This is about where you're at. And your rifle is like, everyone starts with a rifle. That's like everyone's first. That's what gets everyone into this.
Yeah.
It's rare that you go out and buy a rucksack. Like, I got my Mystery Ranch rucksack. Now it's time to get a rifle. That's more rare. You start with a rifle. Even like hunting, you start with a rifle. Like in the hunting community, you don't start with your Barney's pack. You go out and you've already got your hunting rifle, whatever it is. So it's the fundamental point of what you're going to build off of in a way. And again, you probably spend time on the range before you go out and work on patrolling, kind of like we talked about last episode. So with all that being said, yes, you should have a platform that makes sense for where you live. Look in your environment. Really look at what you've got and really consider like, okay, what can I get away with? Could I have a longer platform and not really have much issues? I would venture to say, yeah, you probably can. Do they look as cool as the really short CQB platforms? No, they don't. CQB, like the Mark 18 platform. That's true too, but the Mark 18 platform is a sexy beast. It looks good. Yeah. And I know a lot of people go for that, aesthetic, but you don't need it more often than not. And it's something we've said in the past. We need to return to that rifleman mentality. We need to get out of this, rappelling. You're not going to be rappelling out of helicopters and like fast roping in and like breaching through like sidewall windows and stuff like that with go fast gear on.
You may not be.
And there might be people out there that are, and that's awesome. But and if you train that stuff, then dude, you're super high speed. But more often than not, I would say if it came time to use these skills we always talk about, it's going to be way more like guerrilla warfare based, a lot more like rifleman focused.
And also consideration with your rifle, like if you are in a situation like, and I guess you can play the what if game. I might not go down that road because it's going to get too crazy, but make your rifle to be the rifle. Don't plan on, I can use this rifle. I can use this other rifle for these situations. I can use this. Like, have a rifle that can kind of do it all,
Yeah.
So, and that could be all the way down to like hunting for animals as well within your area. Because you may not have another rifle. Like, you may not have that ability to have like an ability to cache a bunch of rifles like in different
and ammo for them.
Yeah.
That's the thing too that you got to consider, like ammunition. Like, where are you getting your ammo from? And are you stockpiling it? There's this stuff goes on for forever, and we'll do future episodes on more of that kind of stuff. I'd like to do like what makes a good rifle setup, kind of thing. And this is not that episode, but I just saw that recently, and it's a reoccurring trend that I've seen of like, it's all about like time standards and stuff like that. And yes, that's a fantastic way to track. It's a great way to train, so don't get it twisted. I'm not saying that I don't believe in that stuff, because that's literally how we train. We go out with a shot timer and we track our progression. We challenge ourselves. We go as fast as we can. We work on balance of speed and accuracy when we're training on the flat range.
Yeah, you need to have more training regiments within there.
Yeah, you got to work on other stuff.
Yeah, because it's not the end all be all. Like, ultimately, I mean, we've kind of beat this dead horse, but like, you don't have to be. Just be the best that you can be in every area.
Yep.
You don't have to be like certain people are just not going to be good at certain things, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
and by not good, I mean like they're just not like. They're not the best, I guess, at it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one other little just kind of nail in the coffin. just to finalize it. And it kind of excuse me, it kind of lends back to the point about what most people in the military aren't the best shots. There was a guy in my unit that I had to go with the range. I was one of the better shooters. I usually, pretty much every time I think, except for maybe once, I qualified expert, under nods or in day, and the qualification table for the U.S. Army is not very hard.
No.
It's targets from 50 meters out to 300 and in between. So, and it's just like I think it's a 40 possible points. Anyways, there was a guy that was in my platoon that he had such a hard time passing that. So I got sent with him. They would send me with him more often than not. Be like, hey, help him pass. Like, go with him, coach him through it, sit up there on the mound with him, help him pass that thing. I'm like, all right. So we'd have to go, and he'd have to try a couple times. And to qualify marksman, marksman's the lowest. You have marksman, sharpshooter, and expert are the three categories.
Yeah.
So it was tough for him. But man, this guy was a good soldier. That was one of his weaknesses, and he needed to work on it. And again, this is not trying to say you shouldn't have those skills. You should. But ironically, it's easier to get good at shooting in the civilian world than it is to get good at shooting in the military world. You don't get to just have your rifle whenever.
No.
It's signed into an arms room. You don't get to just go to the range whenever you want. The only way you get good at it is if you own your own personal gear. If you buy your own, personal carbines, which, for me, I had that stuff. So it was easier for me to go practice.
Yeah,
and that's what I like to do.
You got to be pretty, people don't realize, but especially for, you were married in the military, so you made pretty good money. I was single in the military. I lived in the barracks. Yeah, I had free housing, and I supposedly had free food, but the DFAC was never open, so there's that.
Yeah.
You just don't make much.
No.
So I bought a rifle in the military, but I literally had to go paycheck to paycheck in order to build my rifle.
Yeah.
I literally spent every bit of money I made for I think it was a 5-month period to build my rifle.
Yeah.
Because you still got bills, you still got cell phone bills and stuff like that.
Car insurance, all that. Yeah.
So you got to be pretty dedicated to actually do that.
Yeah, and it's a time thing too, because when you're active duty, man, they get their money's worth out of you. They keep you working.
I'm going to say, yeah.
So, anyways, the point I'm leading up to is that this dude struggled with shooting, but he deployed with us and he killed it. He did awesome. He kicked butt. He was super reliable. He freaking was just solid. He got stuff done. He could be relied on to pick people up and haul them out of there if he needed to. He was fast. He got stuff done. He was good on his fitness. And I would take that guy. If he was here and, crap was going down, I'd be like, dude, let's do it. Yeah, he can't shoot very good, but he's going to be a very capable person. So, and this is not all to make an excuse for you. If you can't shoot, then work on that. If you suck, then you need to get out there and get better. This is not I don't want to make an excuse for people. I don't want someone to hear this and be like, yeah, I knew it. I don't have to be good. No, you still need to be good, because you need to be able to hit what you're aiming at.
Yeah.
If you're in an engagement and you're shooting back at somebody, you need to be able to hit them, because the faster you hit them, it lowers the chances of them hitting you or your buddies. So you got to be a good shooter. But yeah, I know this horse has been just absolutely beaten to death and buried in the ground at this point. But just if you see that mentality of that superiority thing of well, if you're not just the most epic competition shooter in the world, then you just don't even need to focus on anything else until you get better at shooting. That's a trash mentality. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, and sure, that might be my opinion, but I don't know. That usually comes from people that are just, all they've done is worked on shooting. And so that's what they have to go off of. And then they're constantly well, yeah, I guess you could go work on that, or I guess you could go buy that stuff. But really what you need to do is go get as good as me as shooting. And it's okay, well, yeah, but this guy might be really good at this,
Yeah.
I don't know. things to think about. What about other considerations as far as gear goes? There's like a lot of specialty equipment.
Yeah, there's like signaling stuff, which is pretty important. Have SOPs built within your crew, like how to signal for each other without radio communication. We kind of talked about different reconnaissance tools.
Yep. Night vision. If you're planning on doing anything at night, you better have night vision.
Yep. So, night vision, thermals.
Yeah.
That stuff's going to give you a serious advantage. Not advantage, depending on who you're fighting, but
yeah,
it'll at least not give them an advantage, I guess.
Yeah, and that's in today's day and age. I mean, it's almost a mandatory item to have. I would say that stuff, which really sucks because it's super expensive, and it's definitely a big chunk of change to make that happen, to buy that stuff, which is unfortunate. I wish it was more commercially available, but also being quality. You know? But it is what it is. I mean, it's expensive technology. It's a small market too, so it's just like any small market. The prices can be driven up. It's like you look at parts for airplanes. It's like that's a pretty small market. So little tiny parts on on a bush plane are freaking crazy expensive for no reason. It's kind of like that. But yeah, it's important to get this stuff, and if you don't have it yet, I mean, just start working towards it. And if everything breaks loose and you're dealing with a crappy situation and you never were able to acquire any kind of night vision, then avoid nighttime, because you're not going to be very capable at night. And if you're fighting somebody, you got to assume that they're able to fight at night and they have night fighting capabilities like night vision and thermal and stuff like that. So yeah, that's something to,
I mean, unless you got like lots of loom that night,
you
can move pretty well under nighttime, but I don't.
But you're going to be seen a lot easier by somebody under nods. So that's definitely something to consider. You got to be careful. So work towards that as far as gear goes too. And if you're planning, I guess the way I look at it is, if you're planning any kind of movements at night, any nighttime patrols, then you should probably have night fighting capabilities like night vision and infrared, lasers, and then thermal stuff as well.
Yeah.
Anything else on gear considerations?
Well, obviously keep your feet dry, keep your feet safe from blisters. Don't have feet like Jacob's right now, currently. Try not to get foot and mouth.
Oh,
hand,
man.
Foot and mouth.
Yeah. I don't even know how I got it.
It'll tear you up.
It will.
No, but seriously, like, good boots. It's such a, like, I just got a new pair of Loas, like, last week or something like that. And, man, yesterday we were out mucking around. And by that, I mean, like, I was just, because it's spring breakup right now in Alaska, and you'll just be walking in some grass and all of a sudden you're underwater and you just don't really know what happened.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty accurate. And, so, man, they kept my feet dry, and it has good support. Like, I was rocking with I'd probably have like a 50-ish pound rock yesterday. Not super heavy, but, just kind of staying active, keeping it all going. Lightweight rock. We were just kind of doing some movement stuff with our guys, and man, it was just, I was just thinking the whole time, like, man, these boots are already like coming in so handy right now. Like, I'm loving every minute of them. It's been a while since I bought a good pair of boots. Like, I've always had like a bunch of boots that I just keep finding for whatever reason. I don't know where they come from. I don't know where I found this like cache of boots, but like, I've moved a few times in my life, and finally I'm in like a house that I've been living in like the longest in like years, like probably in the last like 15 years. I've lived in the house that I'm in right now the longest of that 15 years. And I'm actually able to like unpack, and I don't know. I've just been
stuff.
Yeah, I've been just a traveling body, but I just keep finding boots from the military and stuff, and I'm like, well, they're not They're not bad, so I mean they're pretty beat up, but I'm just gonna rock them.
Yeah.
So finally, I was just like, well, we're done. We're done with these boots, these old trash boots, and I was just like, well, I'm gonna get a new set. So,
yep, that's a good choice too. Loa is a great brand. I've ran Loa now for years, and I've had a few of their different models, and they've all been good. I've yet to find a Loa boot, and I've only ran I think 3 of their models, but they have a lot more than that. But they all work for me. So
yeah,
the Renegades are the ones that I'm most fond of. But
yeah, those are the ones I got. So the old Renegades and socks obviously play a huge part. Like you can have good boots all day long, but if you're rocking trash socks, then
yeah,
it's gonna suck for your feet regardless.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm sure there's tons of gear out there. It's kind of hard because patrolling such a wide. Like you use patrolling in pretty much every mission type you go out on, whether that's vehicle patrolling or foot patrol. So it's kind of hard to sit here and talk about all the gear that you would need for patrolling. But this is more just to kind of like get people brainstorming on like, okay, yeah, I never thought about that, or yeah, that's true. I guess. That's something that needs to be considered. So
yeah, no, for sure. But yeah, I agree. Like keeping your feet protected and dry. Also yourself, like we kind of already talked about that. But you want to layer up and have stuff that makes sense. So,
yeah, stay warm and dry.
Yep,
it'll keep you alive.
Keep you happy too. Which helps keep you alive, because if you can keep your morale up, then you're gonna be better for it.
Oh, lickies and chewies, man.
Complacent, yeah.
We gotta always throw in the lickies and chewies,
lickies
man.
And chewies, gotta have them.
Make sure you have food, water.
Water, yep.
Ways to make water clean so you don't get beaver fever or something.
Shelter, all the things that go into like long-term field work. That's what you need. I mean, and we did a pretty extensive gear list in, I think it was the Reconnaissance Basics Part 2.
And that gives you a pretty good idea for like foot patrol work.
Yeah.
But you're able to do a little bit more out of a vehicle anyways. Like you can have what's in your pack, but then you can also have like stuff that's not so essential but could make it a little nicer, like inside the vehicle.
Yep.
Where if you end up having to ditch the vehicle, it's not the end of the world that you don't have it, but it's nice while you were in the vehicle to have it, I guess we could hop into some formations. We kind of talked about this on part 1, but what's a good distance? Like obviously that's going to vary depending on what's going on.
Terrain dictated. But you want to be pretty spread out. I mean, and I think, like you said, we kind of talked about this, but we'll get into it again and maybe get a little more specific. But kind of what you're trying to do is you're trying to maintain a separation that's going to keep you all from getting killed. That's kind of one, keep you all from getting killed by the same enemy fire, and 2, keep you from being seen by the same enemy as well. So you don't want to give away your whole element just because you're moving so clustered. I mean, if you've got like 12 guys and you're literally like, a meter apart, you're just kind of clustered moving through, they're going to see you all, and they're going to be able to tell by how you're positioned that, like, that's probably all those guys right there.
Yeah.
They could set up like a machine gun position and pretty much kill you all, or hit you with indirect, or throw a grenade at you, and get most of you with one attempt. That's what you're trying to avoid. So you want to have, a good 10 to 15 minimum, I think, of separation in between meters. 10 to 15 meters or yards, whatever you want to use. They're pretty much negligible. I think it's a 3-inch difference between a meter and a yard. Meters are a little bit longer, but anyways, you want to have some separation, and you need to. The other thing you want to think about is from like your formation's perspective. You don't want to lose sight of each other, so you should at least be able to see the guy ahead of you or the guy next to you or behind you or whatever.
Or behind you, wherever they're at in the formation.
So you should always be able to like pass eyesight. So
do hand-arm signals. That's very important. We were talking about in the last podcast, keeping your radio traffic down as minimal as possible. Having good SOPs for hand-arm signals is super important. And basically, just because you can't see the very front man that's doing the hand-arm signals, everyone should be passing it back so that way no one misses it.
Yeah. Yeah, you shouldn't have to talk really at all. If you're a really cohesive group and you've got it down, you've got good SOPs, you shouldn't even have to really speak.
No.
You should be able to do everything you need to do, like with pointing and hand and arm signals, or just like giving a look.
Yeah.
So it's something that you'll build as you kind of go on and you build that like cohesiveness in your group,
Yep.
So yeah, and then as far as like what formations to use, it again depends on terrain. If you're in some like really thick vegetation, you might have to file. If you're, and we talked about, we kind of explained what these were in the last one, but a file would be good, which is just like a single file line pretty much. But you want to maintain that good spacing.
Yep.
You want to move pretty slow too, unless again, going back to MET-TC, if time considerations is an issue where you've got a limited amount of time to get somewhere, then you might have to like move pretty fast.
Yeah, which can also dictate your route as well. Like if you got road systems and you need to move to a certain objective quickly, you can use those road systems. It's a dangerous. You got to take in the fact that, yeah, I'm out in the open and I'm moving on a path that, pretty much everyone's going to move on.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're not in the woods anymore where your chances of getting seen are a lot less than if you're moving on a road. But
yeah,
if you got to move fast, you got to move fast. And sometimes you got to pick the right way to do it in order to get the job done. So,
yeah.
And that would just kind of come into play with your point man and your squad leader. They can kind of do some on the fly route adjustments, I guess, depending on MET-TC, obviously. So, or yeah, depending on MET-TC, because that covers it all.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and that way you're not like, and what I mean by that, like the point man can come up on something, whether the mission needs it or terrain is kind of forcing you to go a different way or whatever it may be. But that way the point man is not just making the decision on his own, like, hey, I'm just going to drag a bunch of people into potential hostile areas.
Yeah.
They can kind of have like a little leader talk through on it. And that way it's like, okay, yeah. And they can be like, well, yeah, this is a good idea. Let's do this. Or no, that's not a good idea. We're not doing that. This is why. We're going to keep on keeping on.
Yeah, and communication's big. It also keeps morale up too. So that's a good leadership tip. Like if you can effectively let everyone know what's going on, or like disseminate the information for everyone to know what's going on, that's going to keep people pretty happy. It's frustrating to get like drug along and not know really what's going on. Like I've been there so many times where I was just a Joe, in the military. And it's like, take a knee, like pull security, and you're just like, okay. And you sit there for like an hour, and you're like, what is going on? And you start to like wonder, but you're just trying to do your job. And all of a sudden it's like, let's go, pick it up, let's go. And then you start going off in some weird direction that wasn't briefed. And you're like, ugh, what are we doing? And then you start to like, and it's more from like I think that's more of a training. Like I noticed it being more of an issue in training.
Yeah, not actually the real deal.
Yeah, when you were out there, but for whatever reason, I noticed that thankfully I had pretty good communication when we were overseas. Like people were,
well, it's because they don't want people to get that way.
Yeah.
So going back to train how you fight. So
yeah, exactly.
Have good communication. Yep. Don't just leave people in the dark.
Because
obviously it happens sometimes and it's accidental, but
or it's like there's no time. There's that. So be okay with it. But at some point, as a leader, if you're in more of a leadership position, like in your head, know like, okay, I need to let everybody know, or have SOPs in place for it.
If you actively do that too, if like the one time that you don't for some reason disseminate the information, then no one's going to actually, like, they're going to be pretty forgiving of you. Like, it's not like you're like you have like a track record of just being like, oh, I'm just going to keep everything because I'm higher than you.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to be like, oh yeah, he must have forgot, or he just didn't have time, because he's usually really good about passing that information back.
Yeah. So it's like, that's something that Steven and I try to do, like within our own little group. But yeah, like Steven said, sometimes it doesn't happen the way you want it to. It's kind of funny too, because Steven and I, it literally just happened yesterday. We were like planning kind of what we were going to do and like where we were going to go and stuff. And some of the guys were like standing around and they were like listening to Steven and I talk, and I was like, sorry guys, we're doing brother speak, because it was literally just like, yeah, well, what about, I know, but I know, but like this, and yep, that's what we're gonna do. Oh, okay, cool. I was just making sure. And everyone was like, one of the
guys say, I have no idea what's going on, but I'm just standing here.
Yeah. And I said, sorry, that was brother speak, because Steven and I are brothers, obviously, and we know exactly like what we're trying to say, and we don't even have to say anything usually. So
yeah.
But then we were just like, all right, let's do it, and we were like, let's go. In our heads, thinking like everyone knows what's going on, but it's like everyone's standing around like, you just said a bunch of adjectives, like nothing actually transpired from that conversation. But yeah, so it's there's things like that happen, but it's just good rule of thumb to keep people aware, keep people up to date, have good SOPs built in your patrolling, your overall patrolling tactics.
You'll also notice that like your patrol, like your formations within the patrol and everything that you do out of the patrol, the mission that you're actually trying to achieve, it's just going to go way smoother. Like if everyone's kind of on the same page, like 100 times smoother.
Yeah.
Than if you just leave people in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So on the while you're moving in the patrol, things to be considerate of are linear danger areas.
Mm-hmm.
So
often referred to as classic acronym LDA.
Yeah.
But yeah, that again, if you ever hear LDA, that stands for linear danger area.
And a linear danger area is basically, this is straight from the old Google, an area where the platoon's flank are exposed along a relatively narrow field of fire. Examples include streets, roads, trails, and streams. So basically anything, like a landing strip would be a linear danger area.
Power lines. A river, or like a stream that you have to cross. Anywhere that, or road, obviously. Road is the most common one, a road or like a trail. Anywhere that you have to cross from one concealed or vegetated area or maybe like an urban area, cross an alley into another one. But you're exposing yourself as you cross over whatever it is, you're crossing over that road. And as you do so, you're going to expose. You don't want to just like file across that, because if you had a gun position set up at the end of one of those, either to the left or the right, they could just cyclic rate of fire, just rip you all down as you guys cross over.
Yep.
So yeah, you want to start breaking down what you do for that, like how you start making that happen?
So there's a few ways to do it. It's kind of dependent. We're going back to MET-TC.
Hey.
People are going to hate MET-TC by the end of these podcasts, but
yeah. I listened to that Minutemen initiative for a little bit, but they literally just, you turn it on and it's just like MET-TC.
But anyways, we'll break it down. So if you're not really worried about time, and you're trying to, obviously, if you're not too worried about time, then there's no reason to be exposing yourself more than you need to be.
Yeah.
So we're going to break it down for, you're not considering time. You're just trying to get across and not be seen, and do it in a safe manner. So basically you can set up two gun positions looking either ways down, either side. We'll use a road, for example. It's going to be easier. So we'll paint a picture. So you got a wood line, a road, and a wood line. You're trying to cross across the road. So you basically put two rifles facing either direction down the roads. Place them in position of cover and concealment. Sorry about that. That was my shoes if they get caught. They're just being squeaky. Anyways, so once you get them set up, they're sitting there pulling security. You're going to file across the road one at a time. Cross. As the first two guys go over, they then get positions on the opposite side of the road. So now you have two rifles pointing each direction. So 4 rifles total, pulling security.
So if your element's moving north, your east and west flanks have 2 rifles covering it, or two gun positions. Yeah.
Yep. So
riflemen.
The first person that goes and actually starts to set up like where you guys are going to hold fast until the whole element has crossed, you're going to go back into the woods a decent distance. Like I think we tried to shoot for like, I don't know, 25 to 50 meters roughly, you know, far enough back that it's like you're not just hanging out in the open like, hey guys, I'm over here. So you cross. Eventually everyone will get across except for the 2 gun positions. Those 2 gun positions would pick up and then go across, and then the last 2 gun positions on the right side of the road that you're trying to get to would then pick up last and follow out. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. You can also do something kind of like we did it in the reconnaissance world a lot, like your last guys that were on the gun positions that were crossing, the last guys to exit out or go across could get branches and just kind of rub the road, like
to
like hide your tracks. Kind of depends on the terrain you're walking in. Like if it's asphalt, it's not really going to matter
unless it's like wet concrete for some reason.
Yeah,
just
which you're just screwed if it's wet concrete. Yeah. I don't like.
Yeah, get the compactor out and no.
I think you could use I think they use like brooms, don't they? Like tough brush brooms to like kind of like once it's like partially.
Oh yeah, I don't know.
They have all kinds David of stuff would know. He rode that skateboard through that fresh concrete one time.
Really?
Brother. Yeah.
On accident?
By accident, yeah. Him and his buddy Jackson.
Oh no. They have to fix it?
Yeah.
Okay.
They got caught, and the workers were still there, and they were like, tried to chew him out, but I don't know. I don't think David really let him. I mean, he was a young kid, but he was still just like how he is, you know?
Yeah.
Kind of like, there's an accident. I don't know what you guys want me to do. Like, I'll fix it. I'll stick around and fix it. And he sat there and fixed it.
Okay.
But anyways, random tangent. If you are worried about time, same steps. You get your rifles set up, your 2 riflemen facing either direction of the road. Then you can just hastily cross. You can go 2 at a time, or usually what we do is 2 at a time with, like, when you cross, your guys that were crossing were pointing their rifles down either side of the road. Like, so one was facing left, one was facing right as they crossed across, and you're kind of moving fast. You can still set up those rifle positions on the opposite side, same thing. So the first 2 guys across would then set up, but the other guys would just keep like a constant flow moving across.
Yep.
So you technically have 3 either direction, 3 rifles aiming down either direction,
right,
at all times. Sometimes it could be more depending on how tight you're running across the road, I guess. And then same thing for exiting, you'd pick up and cross over. Yeah, so that's basically it. There's other ways to do it, but that's kind of one of the ways you can do it.
Yeah. And it's really important not to this is where things like complacency can start to kind of hit you. We talked about that last time. And again, a term to remember is complacency kills. It's easy to just kind of go in the motions and just start crossing over like LDAs or linear danger areas without much care. You're just like, we're in the middle of nowhere. I'm just going to cross over. That's where that's where people start getting killed.
Yeah.
They're natural ambush points. They're also, more often than not, it's something that the odds of something crossing it are very high. Because if it's a road that bisects, a huge chunk of, operational area, then they're going to have to cross it. Like when we were, like back when I was in the military, we would do like opposition, like we'd play Op 4, opposition force, which you're basically playing the bad guys. We'd set up ambushes on LDAs all the time, and you'd almost always get people, whether we were running simunitions or like the laser rigs, where you're basically playing like big army laser tag. you know, you could get some people that were thinking they were being sneaky and they were being lazy on an LDA.
Yeah.
So it's a real deal. Like you gotta take it seriously. So don't get complacent. Build it into your recipe. Make it a part of your patrolling. And it's something that if you're on any kind of patrol, you're gonna come across LDAs. Like it's part of it.
Yeah.
Especially if you're urban, like you're gonna deal with them all the time, and you can come up with a lot of different SOPs where you got like high and low elevation covered, and there's a lot of different stuff you can do. Urban's a whole other
Urban's
monster.
gonna have a different animal, but
yeah.
I mean, it's still basically the same thing. You're posting up security in order to cross first.
Yep.
Like have some sort of security. Use your buildings if you're able to. You know, get high positions or whatever so you can see better.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, you're doing the same. It's the same concept. You know, you're posting up security down each alley or multiple alleys if there's kind of like if you're at like a T or something like that. And yeah. Obviously you can only do what you can do. Like if you don't have the manpower to pull security in every direction, no one's actually able to cross the road because you have everyone pulling security, then there's you're not really much good at that point. But
yeah. But you can do a 4-man pretty easy. You know, you set up a left and right security down the LDA, looking down each direction of the LDA, cross one man over. He posts up, cross the other man over. He posts up on the opposite direction, and then the last two peel. So, you know, you can even do it with 3, really. You're just going to have one guy's going to have to cross, point in the opposite direction of the guy that's on the other side.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, either way, you need to have some kind of...
But say just work on it. Like that's ultimately what you got to do. That's the only way you're going to get good at it is if you actually go out and you put it to work. You got to go out there and do it. Otherwise, you're just going to be lost when you actually have to do it for real.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
or you're going to walk out into a...
Kind of on that, because you brought it up, was ambushes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, reacting to ambush. Like, know how to do that out of your patrol. Whether, you know, work on it in all the different formations that you plan to use with your group, you know. If it's close, like if it's within 25 meters... Your best chance of survival is to actually just fight it at that point because you're so close. If it's anything past that, then you can usually bound out if you don't have that 3-to-1 odds, you know, if you go off of that. But that's a good number, which depending on how small your team is, you're probably never going to have that. So bailing out might be the best option.
Yeah.
That's something to work on. If you have equipment to mask your positions like smokes and stuff like that, maybe don't burn them up and use them, but like practice, like, you know, simulate, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, that's the key is, you know, actually get out and test this stuff. I mean, these are just the very basic, like we're going over the fundamental stuff. But it's all extremely dependent on where you are. You know, all the METTC stuff, it's dependent on all that. It's also dependent on
the size of your element.
Yep. And what you guys have, like what your
capabilities are. Yeah.
Yep. Your manpower, your equipment capabilities, your, you know, area of influence, like all that stuff.
Yeah. You may be only running out of vehicles, you know, like you may not want to, like, I would say you should be working on both.
Yeah.
Because you should be able to do both. But if the majority of the stuff is out of vehicles, then know how to, you know, react to that kind of stuff out of a vehicle as well. You know, train out of vehicles, which is almost a different topic in itself. I mean, we kind of been bringing it up, but there's so much that goes into the vehicle patrolling that
we're saving it for another one. I mean, that was like my bread and butter when I was heavy weapons, so we did a lot of stuff out of vehicle. It was a lot of vehicle borne operations, so. We'll definitely have full topics on that because there's a ton of stuff there.
Yeah.
And when you get into the soft skin world, it's even different, even more
scarier.
Different. Yeah. And I don't have a lot of experience with that, so we may bring somebody on to kind of go into some of that.
Yeah.
So,
So now that because yeah. So that's just kind of lightly going over ambushes. Obviously, that's going to be very SOP dependent. But I would say, if it's super close engagements, your best chance of survival is just to turn into the fire and fire back and try to just push through. If you die, you die. If you live, good for you.
Yep.
You're probably going to
try to
people,
flip the script.
Know how to do medical because people are going to get shot. You get an ambush, you obviously were surprised. So
yeah.
You were at a disadvantage going into it. So don't get ambushed.
Yeah.
Long story short, do good things prior to the ambush. That way it's harder for you to be ambushed.
That's where using like sills and stuff like that's going to come in really handy. The stop, look, listen, and smell.
Yeah.
Do it often. Stop, listen. You hear people like whispering off in the distance? Well, that's a red flag. You hear like gear shuffling around, or you can tell especially if you, the more time you spend out in the woods doing this kind of stuff, you can tell the difference between that's a person rummaging around over there and that's an animal.
Sometimes, like if you're dealing with a larger player, they're going to be almost like the same concept between Ukraine and Russia. Russia went into it. Well, I don't really know because I'm not over there. Some of those guys, I think, just didn't know what they were walking into, like the Russian soldiers. But
yeah.
Like I think there's people that are going in as like from not now probably anymore, but like at first, like we're gonna dominate, like we're just gonna go in there and take over, like, and the confidence and their ability kind of ended up being a downfall. And that same thing's gonna happen if you're just a small little group. Obviously, the people that are trying to hunt you down or whatever it may be, they're more than likely gonna be like, think that they are like top notch, so they're not going to be as nearly as quiet as you could be and everything, they're just going to be some guys that are like, oh yeah, it's going to be easy.
Yeah.
So
for sure. Yeah. And you see examples of that all the time. Like when I was overseas, we had some very small groups of people that would do harassment fire and give us problems that were hard to deal with. And we obviously had all the assets and resources available at our disposal. And we kind of brought this up last podcast, I think, but it's actually, it can be harder to fight for a big conventional fighting force to fight a small group, more guerrilla warfare focused group rather than fight like another big conventional force. So, yeah, use it to your advantage, but you just gotta be smart, don't get ambushed. I mean, that's the key. Like, use your size to your advantage. The fact that you're smaller and you're doing more small unit tactics and stuff like that, that can be an advantage. It can definitely be a disadvantage, but you need to be careful not to punch outside your weight. Like, you don't want to be going up against a big like 60-man element. You're gonna get smoked. But there's things you can do. You can do quite a bit as a small element. You just gotta be smart about it.
Yeah, definitely. And then patrol bases.
Yeah.
What is it and why is it used?
Well, a patrol base is basically an impromptu little like it's a impromptu kind of base, I guess, that you set up while out on patrol. They're good to go into when you stop, if you're going to be stopped for a long period of time. What you often want to do is do it in an area that provides you good cover and concealment options. You want to have some good cover, like maybe like falling over trees, or if you're more urban, like an area that's like you could set up like an interior patrol base where you go into like a big structure that's going to allow everyone to be in it pretty easily, but still be kind of spread out. More rural, obviously, then you want to maintain good separation so one mortar doesn't just take your whole gang out. But you want to have 360 security.
Yep.
So you want to set up 360-degree security, which you should have 360-degree security at all times on a patrol. Hopefully that's been clear up till now. But if you're on the right side of a formation, then you're covering the right side. If you're on the left side of the formation, you're covering left. If you're more forward, you're covering front. If you're in the back, you're covering the back. You should have, and then you need to have overlapping sectors of fire. So
yep,
that should be going on constantly. And it's no different when you get into a patrol base. So generally the way it works is you may have predetermined rally points or like waypoints that you're going to, or checkpoints, I guess, that you're going to stop at. Like, we're going to stop here, set up a patrol base here. This looks like a good area. On your map, you've like predetermined certain areas you're going to do this.
Yeah.
So your point man is basically going to kind of determine an area that looks good. Like I was kind of getting into, you want to have good coverage overhead. Want to have good cover and concealment options. You want to basically be able to hide your element.
Yeah.
A big thing to focus on is that overhead coverage.
Yeah, you need to try to park. Yeah. Park your patrol base in a spot that you have decent canopy cover from the trees.
Yep.
If you don't have trees, then you're screwed. No, I don't know.
Well, yeah, and if you're in urban, then that's why inside a building or something like that would work pretty good. But you don't want aerial assets to be able to see you. Right now in Ukraine, we're seeing a lot of focus on drone usage. People using drones. People finding people and even dropping little bombs on people using drones, which is crazy. So you want to avoid that. Helicopters, anything with like FLIR, forward-looking infrared, or like thermal vision.
Yeah, and you'd be surprised how much like the canopy on a tree actually covers you from that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah,
like it's not perfect, but it's definitely better than not having it.
Especially if you're limiting your movement. So basically, the point man's going to go in. He's going to identify an area. He's going to go ahead and stop, take an E or whatever, and start filing people in. And he'll start motioning people in, hand signals, and basically telling them where to go.
Yeah, pointing them in a direction where they head. It's going to be up to the individual to find a good spot, though, once that happens. But, if you train this enough, okay, we're basically creating like a 360-degree circle of security.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to go up, and I'm going to find a good spot that has decent cover and concealment that I can still see out of, and pull security, still have decent view on what I'm supposed to be pulling security on.
Yeah. And it should be automatic. You should go in as soon as you see this happen, you get pointed in a direction, you're like, all right. And you're going to fill in from the closest spot out. So there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can have your first guy push all the way through and kind of set like a limit of advance.
Yeah.
So there's that way you can do it too, which sometimes that's a better way for small stuff. So basically if you're the first man, you may get pointed to like all the way across, and then you have to go find a nice little spot, plant up, and then guys are going to fill in to your left and right and kind of form a circle,
Yeah.
And then in the middle of the circle is where your head shed's going to be, which is like your leadership. So,
and depending on how the size of the element, you may not have that ability,
Yeah.
You may have to have guys that are just pulling security. What's nice about having the ability to have that head shed is that person can then break people out of the circle to allow them to, hygiene, eat, drink, all that good stuff. So they're basically constantly breaking people out of their security.
Do you want to explain breaking people out, like what that means?
Basically relieving them of their post, I guess.
Yeah, so going to their position and saying, hey, go ahead and fall into the middle and do what you need to do, or step back off the line a little bit. Or you can literally stay right there.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so then, I mean, if you have the amount of people, like if we were doing entire platoon patrol bases, usually you would just put two spots at two people at each spot.
Yep.
Pulling security. And that way you could have like 50% security where you had like
one up, one down.
One up, one down. That just allowed them to, eat, drink, sleep. And that's what's nice. You're going to need patrol bases. Like, if you're doing long patrols, they're going to be required. Otherwise, you guys are just not going to eat and drink and not be able to sleep ever. So,
yeah, so it's not every time you stop. It's every time you need to take a break of some kind, whether that's a, like, navigational break, like a more admin break, or it's like a lunch break, food and water. or if you're just like, hey, this is where we're going to be for the next day for whatever reason,
Yeah.
It's anywhere that's going to be more extended periods of time. You want to set up have that good cover and concealment, and have that good 360 degree. If you have a smaller unit, the tighter your patrol base is going to be. If you have a bigger unit, it can be a little more spread out.
Yeah, and it also allows you to do a lot out of them too. So like you can refit on water. So like you can send out a team of guys. Like can be a small group, like two-man team. You could do that goes out and collects water to be, filtered down to be drinkable water.
Yep.
So, but yeah, and then it allows you to kind of get set up before your final objective on your mission, like whether it's reconnaissance or you're going to go hit an objective. You can do a leader's recon out of the patrol base, which we covered the leader's recon in the reconnaissance podcast, but basically that is where you send out a team. It can be a two-man team as well. It can be it can be bigger than that too if you have a lot of people. And they just go out, gather intelligence on the objective, make sure that it, because everything was planned on a map, or it should have been. And then you're basically making sure it all makes sense, actually, like from the human eye, I guess. Going out, making sure, there's this many people here or whatever it may be, whatever you're looking at.
Yeah.
So you can do that as well.
Yeah, and again, that's very dependent on how many people you have. And
yeah, if you have a tiny group of people, you might as well just do, like, you may skip that step. Like, if you only have a 3-man team, then there's not really a point.
You're just going to do recon.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, if you got 10 or 12 guys, maybe sending a little 3-man element out to do a little, like, expedient little leaders recon could be helpful. It's nice because you can drop your rucks, you can strip down to like really lightweight essential stuff, just like your kind of your first line gear.
Yep.
And you go out, maybe glass a objective or, record whatever kind of reconnaissance you need. You're just basically getting forward eyes on something. Then you can come back and disseminate that information to the rest of your element, and then that gives you a little more data before you move in or do whatever you need to do. So
yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
That's pretty much leader's recon.
Yeah.
It's pretty straightforward. So I guess kind of as we start to wrap up here, what are some final considerations that should be considered for patrolling?
Man, there's tons. I feel like we breezed over quite a bit, but that's all right. I mean, it's as well as you can do in a talking form, like in a podcast on this stuff without actually like drawing and being up on a whiteboard and showing like different stuff, because
we just wanted to get some I guess some outline out there beyond just like looking at videos and pictures of people walking around in the woods. Like a lot of the content right now is like really, especially on Instagram, it's like people are like gun culture 3.0 or 4.0. It's like, get out there. And then it's like this like cool montage of like guys just walking around in the woods, and it's like this like kind of like intense eerie music playing in the background.
But what are they actually doing?
You're like, they're like, oh, we need to go out and train like that. But then you go out and you're just kind of walking around and you're like, what are we doing right now? So
Dude,
we just
so
trying
true.
to, and I've seen it time and time again. Like,
I've never actually thought about that because I actually know what they're doing in those pictures.
Yeah.
So I just look at it and I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Good for them. They're actually out training.
Then there's guys that have really good content. Like one, for example, which if you're not following this person, you need to follow this person. It's Redbeard Tactical. This guy is killing it. Like they're doing some cool stuff. I think it's more than just one guy. I think if they've got like an organization of people now, but they're out of Germany and super solid, good basic like infantry skills and stuff, and a lot of it's NATO based, so that's cool. But do take into consideration that if you live here in America, it is a foreign organization, so some things may be a little bit different, but honestly, from what I've seen, it's been super solid.
Yeah, it's pretty solid. I mean, obviously even some of the things we say, because we're up in Alaska, some of our stuff's altered. to actually like make sense up here. Like a lot of the stuff we talk about is out in the trees,
more rural.
Yeah, because
that's where we're at.
We live in the woods, man.
Which, thank goodness. I mean, no offense, if you live in a city, your life's going to be miserable if things go to crap. Honestly, get out of the city. Like,
come up to Alaska. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, stay away. No, I'm just kidding. no, but seriously, the cities are really dangerous to be in. Get out of those urban environments if it's at all an option. Like if something bad happens, maybe having a plan to bug out of that urban environment might be worth it. But again, all considerations. But anyways, back to Redbeard Tactical. Super good source. He's putting out good information. He's explaining different formations, actually showing like building good content, stuff that we're planning on doing too. Obviously, we're going to do it more from our perspective and things that pertain to kind of where we're at and stuff like that. But they are doing really cool stuff, very knowledgeable people. So there's guys like that you can also look at. So I'm not saying all the information on Instagram is just weird, but most of it is. I think most of the really popular people are doing like, it's more marketing value stuff. You know what I mean? Because that's what gets traction. That's what people like and share and, post about. So it makes sense. But there are people like Redbeard Tactical who are doing really cool things.
Would you say it's almost like a form of fishing? Almost like just trying to like.
Well, yeah, it's
people's interest.
People are always in that. It's well, maybe I think it's just trying to get followers. Trying to gain success.
Yeah,
which there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's we do some of the same stuff. I mean, you have to. That's how business works now.
Yeah.
But no, there's really good stuff out there, and I'm just naming one of several that I would recommend. But anyways, long story short, you can even watch someone like that and still be a little bit like, I wish I had a little more information. Yeah. So that's why, this might be kind of there's probably some redundancies and you can only go long form on this for so long, but there are like so many little intricacies.
I was about to say there's so much stuff within the patrol base alone that's like, we didn't even touch. Like you can do range cards from those positions. Like you can do like a bunch of stuff like that just goes on in the patrol base.
Yeah.
That you almost just got to get out there and do it in order to figure it out. But if you don't have any direction, that's the problem. That's where like video content and stuff like that, I feel like comes in handy for this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess, I mean, a range card. We've talked about range cards before, right?
Yeah, I think we did in reconnaissance a little bit. That could be pretty good.
But basically, a range card. This basically helps if you do get broke out of your position, like to get like sent to the middle to refresh and do your stuff. Change your socks or whatever it may be. If you build a range card, basically you draw out like a cone of like what your area is that you're covering, and then you put distance marks along the cone, and you can do like drawings like, hey, there's a tree right over here, or like some landmark stuff. Kind of it paints a picture.
There's a cell tower over here.
Yeah,
or whatever. Yeah,
at roughly this distance. If you have you can estimate distance, or you can just, if you have like a rangefinder, you can do that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you basically just build it out. So that way the next guy that comes in, he can look at your range card and be like, okay, everything's already kind of plotted out for that person. So they can hang out there and be like, yeah, okay, I know what distance is. I can know what kind of hold I need in order to make this shot, or whatever it may be,
It's good too for like disseminating information like, hey, I've got somebody at the, because this is stuff you have predetermined for the rest of your unit.
Yeah.
So you can be like, hey, the big oak tree or whatever it is, like whatever your landmark is, or like the cell tower. Like, hey, I've actually got 3 guys up by that cell tower. And everyone's like, okay, well, that was 400 meters up to the southeast.
Yeah.
So, and that gives, it's just a good way to, especially if you're going to be there for long periods of time, it's good to do. And that's why you need to have like,
most of the time you're setting up a patrol base, you're going to be there for at least a couple hours. Like, there's no point to set up a patrol base if you're only going to be there for an hour or less.
Yeah.
Like, that's just stupid. That's a waste of time.
Yeah, you could just dig in and pull security.
I was about to say, you can just do something like, you could literally just do a...
well, you could do a hasty patrol base where you just kind of circle in. And
yeah, but honestly, all you have to do is, like, if you're moving in a decent, like, if you're in a wedge or whatever, you don't even have to, like, follow them through at that point. You just basically sit them down and you say, hey, you pull this guy up.
Yep.
You just kind of shift them all around in a tighter circle.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not quite as wide as a patrol base, and then you just have your, like, discussion on whatever you're doing, and you disseminate the information and then cruise.
Yeah.
So that would be, I guess that is still a patrol base technically. It's just kind of a hasty one. But, yeah. And then there's some other things. Obviously, we talked about nighttime. Like, if you're going to be patrolling, make sure you have night vision. Moving undetected. We talked about not using, like, super fragrant, like, not super, but they don't use, like, scented stuff, like, for washing. That way you're not just smelling like a flower out in the wood line.
Yeah.
Also, if you're moving through, like, the woods and stuff, it can be pretty loud. You got leaves, sticks, and things like that dried out. Don't just, like, walk like a Yeti out there in the woods. Like, try to move.
Just rhino style.
Yeah, like, I mean, slowly set. I mean, you'll figure it out as you walk, especially, like, if you're actively working on it. But, you know, I always like to walk, like, almost like heel to toe, and, like, slowly just set my weight down. And I, like, just naturally do it now. Like, I don't even really think about it. That's just the way I walk. But
yeah,
don't just be stomping out there, basically.
Yeah, take sure-footed steps. Like, you shouldn't be like, you should, and
you
some of
almost
this
start
goes
from your
into,
heel and roll to your toe. Like, everyone's like, oh, no, you tiptoe to be quiet. It's like, no, because then you're putting all your weight immediately down on the toes. Like, there's no, like, unless you're walking backwards, like, there's no, like, slowly putting your weight down if you're starting with your toes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you almost got to do, like, a wave with your foot.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense whatsoever. I don't know.
No,
if
it does. Yeah. And then also, you know, like I was saying, you want to take sure-footed or, like, aimed steps. Like, you know, you don't want to be looking down all the time, but you definitely want to be looking
down,
up. But you want to be placing your foot. You don't want to just be, like, lazy flopping around with your feet, just like, like, you don't want to. You should be fit enough to have the core strength to, like, balance on one foot and, like, gently put your other foot down, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And also, like, learning how to use your peripherals. Like, I don't look down when I'm walking. And I don't know if that's a military thing that got taught into me pretty hard. Like, I pretty much keep my head up. Like, every once in a while, like, if I'm crossing, like, some fallen down tree or something, I'm going to look down, like, to cross over it. That way I'm not just, like, getting stabbed in the junk by some branch or something, you know?
Yeah.
But for the most part, I'm, like, keeping my head up. I'm looking around. And I'm still able to see what I'm walking on. Like, I know, okay, I'm coming up on some pretty dried out leaves. Like, these are going to be kind of loud, so I need to kind of go a little bit slower into this.
Yeah.
And the same thing with your side peripherals, too. Like, constantly paying attention to who's behind you, who's to the side of you, all your team guys. Like, you should be able to see, like, when they turn and give you a hand-arm signal. Like, you should be, like, maybe not catch it up with your peripherals, but at least, like, okay, they don't have to sit there and, like, throw it at you, like, multiple times because you're actually paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
Like, your eyes need to be constantly, like, gathering information the entire time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you don't want to be just, like, complacently just glazing around, you know. It's it's easy to fall into it. I know we said it last time, but
yeah,
it's worth bringing up. Don't just start going through the motions. Like, stay active.
Yeah. And it's good for you, too. It's good for your brain to constantly be, like, working and picking up information, because the more you work on trying to do that, I feel like the more it just subconsciously, your brain does that. Like, it automatically is just gathering information. Like, just like, oh, yeah, it's constantly working. I can't stress enough radios. Like I think we've kind of beat this dead horse, but, like, if you're doing small unit tactics, like, radios are a blessing and a curse, like, 100%. Like, I'm not saying don't own them. I'm just saying be smart with them. Like,
Yeah.
I think they are a must to have, but I think that you definitely need to build solid SOPs before you just start running them.
Yeah, absolutely. And you need to go out and test what your radios are capable of doing. You know?
Dude, I'm just turning into Kermit the Frog over here.
What do you mean?
I don't know. My throat's doing all sorts of weird stuff again.
I didn't pick it up last time, so
No,
I'm
I know.
just acting like it's not happening. Watch, it's just going to be so loud in this one somehow.
Yeah.
No, but yeah. Man, that derailed me. I don't remember what I was saying.
Sorry about that. It just kept doing it. Like, you gave me that look at first when it first did it, and then it just started doing it again. I was like, what the heck is going on?
No, I think I was saying test your radio. Yeah, you want to know, like, now's the time to go out and test their capabilities. And, you know, if you're communicating on low power, figuring out how far does that actually go? You know, how well does it push over terrain, different things like that. Good things to know. And also, you don't need to be on the radio very much, you know?
No.
Radios can be a crutch. Don't lean on your radio too much. Like, you can use, especially if you're in a patrol and you've got good cohesion, you've got good SOP, you don't need to be on your radio. You guys can hand an arm signal that bad boy, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, radios are generally, you know, I mean, if you're small unit stuff, they're more for like, all right, I've got an element way over there that I got to talk to, or like emergency stuff, you know. But yeah, I would avoid much use of radios, especially in this kind of scenario, or this kind of environment where you're, you know,
The small fish in the sea.
Yep.
Just trying to survive, not getting eaten.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, that was I hope we gave some decent information. I think it's a lot. It's honestly so much information that it's kind of hard to give it all in a way that it's going to be like all out there to be spilled out.
Yeah, and also not just an absolute drag to listen to. I mean,
yeah.
I know that some of this stuff might be kind of dry, but it's, you know, that's part of it too. Like, we can sit there and walk through, like, break down and walk through an LDA for, you know, 30 minutes, but it's just going to sound like at some point you're just going to be listening to it like, oh my gosh, like, nope, on to the next episode, you know?
Yeah.
So, again, trying to just give good information, good basic breakdown, fundamental stuff that you can start to put into practice. So if you are one of those people that's kind of looking out there at the online world and you're kind of like, you know, you want a little more information, like, again, because you can look at like outlines and diagrams of like formations and how to patrol, and or you see like a montage of like guys moving around in the woods, and you're like, okay, I want to get out and start working into that stuff. But I feel like the mixture of that stuff into this is going to give you a little more like, all right, so that breaks down like what I'm actually doing. You know?
Yeah, and then it gives you the ability to kind of think for yourself as well. Like, okay, so I'm in this environment, and I'm, you know, I have this many guys. You can kind of custom tailor it to what you currently have, what your capabilities are, and then also like the area that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can work on it from there. And then if you go out and actually train and put some of this stuff to practice, you'll be able to start then working on SOPs on how you want to do stuff, like, you know, like team SOPs within your group. So
yeah,
I think that's the way to do it. Not everything, you know, there's more ways to do this stuff than what we've told or what some other guy's saying on the internet. You know, like there's more ways to skin a cat, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily every way's the right, or not. There's not like one answer for the way to do it, but
oh, absolutely.
So
yeah, no, I mean, it all comes down to putting it to practice, and I think that's, you know, that's what we want to end this with, is like, you gotta get out and train.
Yep.
Get out, put this stuff into practice. You know, again, you need to be able to shoot. I don't want there to be any confusion with that. Again, when I was ranting
and you can
earlier,
shoot while you're doing this stuff.
Exactly.
Like, there's so many times that we've set up. We've got like kind of this area that we've kind of helped our guys build dope cards, which is like data on previous engagements.
Mhm.
So basically, just depending on the round, like the grain and what rifle you run and all that stuff.
Mhm.
Basically, you're building a card that is like a cheat sheet.
Yep.
For different distances. So that's kind of going back to the range card. If you have a dope card and you have a range card, you're able to be pretty effective at shooting as long as you're actually training to shoot.
Yeah.
So it all kind of circles back, but but you can go out in the woods and work on all this stuff and still shoot. Like we have done this hundreds of times, if not thousands of times. Me and Jacob, we've gone out with different groups, different guys from our team or different just friends of ours, gone out and done this stuff. So it's too easy to put it all together if you want. If you have the capability to put it all together, put it all together. If you don't, then kind of isolate and train that way because that works as well.
Yeah, and if it's just they're pretty easy to isolate. Go to the range, work on the range. That's still vitally important. It's a huge part. You got to be able to shoot. So obviously doing that, putting on all your gear and going on a ruck, like just going on a ruck march, working in those muscles.
Yeah, and people think it'd be weird. Like we do it all the time. Like I remember my wife, we started rucking with all our gear on. Yeah. And she's like, do people just drive by you and look at you like you're super weird? Yeah, I'm like, no, not really.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure there's people out there that are like, who are these weirdos?
Yeah.
But for the most part, people just wave and smile and they're like, hey,
Yep.
Like at least up here in Alaska, they're like happy to see people out there doing that. I feel like.
Yeah, I think most people are like, oh, they're getting ready for a hunt this year.
Yep.
Or,
we're getting ready for a hunt.
No. Well, yeah, we are probably going to go on some hunts. We need to. I got to stock my freezer.
Well, I didn't mean like that.
I know.
I was joking, but
I was saying literally though. But then there's also people that know, like, they see us and they're like, hey, it's the DDS guys. And they'll like wave and honk and stuff. And you're like, what the heck? But, no, it's pretty cool. But,
where's my holster?
Yeah.
Somewhere. It's somewhere.
But, yeah, it's good to do. I mean, you can do that, and then you can start to get even farther. You can, if you got a group of people, even if it's just 2 or 3 people, just go out in the woods, start training, start really putting this stuff to practice. It should become second nature. Like moving in the woods or patrolling, like moving through patrol, should just be like a basic task.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it should be something that's not even thought about, but is done so smoothly.
Yep.
And I think that's ultimately what you should try to get to. Because if you can get that way with your team, for one, it builds so much camaraderie, but it just makes everything past that so much smoother. Mm-hmm. If you're able to like just move effectively through the woods or through a city or through a building, work on, which that's a completely different podcast, but like, where you're dealing with just urban stuff.
Yeah.
Knowing how to clear rooms and all that stuff, but like, yeah, work on all that stuff. It's, for one, it's fun, and for two, it it's effective and it's important to do. So I think on that, I think we're gonna call it quits for part 2. I'm sure we'll visit this topic again in the future. It'll be a while probably before we hit anything like this again, but we have tons of awesome episodes that we can't wait to record. We've been brainstorming and lots of good content coming your guys' way. So we'll catch you guys next time.